Human behavior fascinates me. On any given day, I can sit and observe people going about their day and wonder, why do they do that? Or I can engage in some self-reflection and ask, why do I do that? Psychologists use the scientific method to provide answers to this question. We know that human behavior is complex, and one theory cannot explain why we do all the things we do in its entirety. This video tutorial focuses on the contribution of operant conditioning to understanding why we do the things that we do, as well as why we don't do the things that we don't do. Operant conditioning, also known as instrumental learning, is fairly straightforward, but I'm not going to lie, it is full of jargon. Jargon refers to words or expressions that are used by a particular profession and can be difficult for people outside of that profession to understand. Part of being a psychology student is learning the jargon. This video serves as just an introduction to the most basic concepts of operant conditioning, namely reinforcement and punishment. The chapter in your textbook is most likely called Learning. Operant conditioning is just one type of learning. Let's start by defining learning in general. Psychologists define learning as a relatively permanent change in behavior that results from experience. This probably surprises you because when most people think about learning, they think about the acquisition of knowledge. For example, you will be learning about operant conditioning in this video. I'm sorry that this causes some confusion. There is a historical reason for using the term learning to refer to behavioral change, but we will not get into that in this video. So learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior that results from experience. Theoretically, this learning occurs because it has some sort of adaptive value. That is, it increases our chances of survival. But how does this learning occur? Your textbook will discuss three different types of learning: classical conditioning, operant conditioning, which may be called instrumental learning in your textbook, and observational learning, also known as social learning or modeling. The psychology department offers other videos on classical conditioning and social learning. Let's start with the basic definition of operant conditioning. Voluntary behaviors are learned as a result of the association of a behavior with its consequences. If you have studied classical conditioning already, then you know that classical conditioning focuses on involuntary behaviors, like feeling anxiety in certain situations, or salivating at the sight of a billboard. Operant conditioning focuses on how the consequences of our actions influence whether or not we choose to perform that action in the future. Are you ready for some jargon? When the consequences of our behavior strengthen the behavior, that is, make it more likely that we will do it again, we say that the behavior is increased as a function of reinforcement. The behavior has been reinforced. When the consequences of our behavior weaken the behavior, that is, make it less likely that we will do it again, we say that the behavior is decreased as a function of punishment. The behavior has been punished. There are two types of reinforcement and two types of punishment. We call them positive and negative, and these terms can get students all mixed up, but I am going to make it easy for you. Positive reinforcement refers to increasing behavior by adding something pleasant as a consequence of that behavior. That is to say that the reinforcement comes after or follows the behavior. The positive part of this definition is that something was added. Positive punishment refers to decreasing behavior by adding something unpleasant following the behavior. Get it? The positive part is that something was added. It helps to think of positive and negative like addition and subtraction. Both positive reinforcement and positive punishment mean that something was added. Positive equals addition. So you can guess what negative reinforcement and negative punishment are. Negative reinforcement refers to increasing behavior by removing or avoiding altogether something unpleasant, and negative punishment refers to decreasing behavior by removing something pleasant following the behavior. Another thing that you really need to remember is that negative does not mean bad and positive does not mean good. If you remember that negative is to take away and positive is to add, and also remember that good and bad have nothing to do with it, then you will be more than halfway to fully grasping these concepts. I know, you want some examples. They are coming. For various reasons, students often find the concepts of positive and negative reinforcement versus positive and negative punishment challenging. Therefore, I am going to present the definitions again in a different format with a few examples for each one. At the end of the video, I will present some multiple choice questions so that you can quiz yourself. Are you up for the challenge? Let's do this. With positive reinforcement, behavior is likely to be repeated due to the presentation of a pleasant stimulus following that behavior. Remember, positive means addition. Something was added or given or presented as a consequence of that behavior. Animal training relies heavily on positive reinforcement. When the cat rings the bell, he gets a treat. When the puppy sits, she gets a treat. Aww. We often attempt to increase behaviors that we want in children by using positive reinforcement, like giving them stickers or toys or candy. These first examples are all examples of ways we might use positive reinforcement in an intentional manner to increase behavior. Learning theorists are interested in this. We call it behavior modification. However, learning theorists are actually more interested in how our behavior is molded by naturally occurring positive reinforcement. For example, this woman is more likely to continue to wear headscarves if she receives compliments from others for doing so. It is not likely that people are trying to increase the likelihood that she wears headscarves. It is just the natural consequence of complimenting her. Likewise, we are likely to search for a parking spot in a lot where we previously found a spot. At this point, I want to be very clear that positive reinforcement is not always a good thing. Notice that the behavior that is increased is not identified as good or bad. It is just behavior. Bad behavior can and does get positively reinforced. Always, always remember that positive does not mean good. Consider a kid on the playground who kicks another kid, steals his lunch money, buys a candy bar from the vending machine, and does not get caught for these actions. The behaviors of kicking and stealing have been positively reinforced. That is, they are likely to happen again in the future because the kid got money, candy, and a sense of power as a result of this behavior. With positive punishment, behavior is not likely to be repeated due to the presentation of an unpleasant stimulus. Remember, positive means addition. Something was added or given or presented. So it should make sense that in order to reduce the likelihood of future behavior, something unpleasant would be experienced. Generally speaking, pain is a positive punisher. That is, if something hurts, we don't want to do that again. This child is not likely to reach up for the hot pan again if he gets burned this time. Unpleasant emotions can also serve as positive punishment. Imagine if a student volunteers to work out a math problem on the board in front of the class, only to find that he cannot do it, and the teacher embarrasses him. You can understand that this student may not volunteer again in the future. Having a child who wrote on the wall, "Clean up her mess," is another example of positive punishment, because she is less likely to write on the wall if she has to engage in the unpleasant consequence of cleaning it up herself. Next, let's tackle the so-called negative consequences. Remember, negative does not mean bad. Negative refers to the removal or avoidance of something. This will make more sense after we look closely at and examine some examples of negative reinforcement and negative punishment. With negative reinforcement, behavior is likely to be repeated due to removal or avoidance of an unpleasant stimulus. We take out the garbage in order to avoid it smelling up the house. We buckle our seatbelt in order to stop that annoying buzzing sound. Many smokers will report that they smoke in order to relieve stress. They are reporting that they believe that smoking reduces their anxiety. In other words, the consequence of the behavior of smoking is the removal of the unpleasant stimulus of stress. This is negative reinforcement for smoking. Don't get pulled back into thinking that the word negative here means bad. The word negative refers to the removal of the stress. I would like to point out here that the research does not support this notion. Smoking doesn't actually relieve stress. However, many smokers believe that it does. There is research to support the practice of deep breathing to relieve stress. If someone practices deep breathing in order to relieve stress, we would say the deep breathing is negatively reinforced by the reduction in stress. We only have one more box to review: negative punishment. With negative punishment, behavior is not likely to be repeated due to the removal of a pleasant stimulus. This is punishment by removing something desired. Parents attempt to use negative punishment by taking things away from their kids. For example, taking a cell phone away from a teen for sending an offensive text message, or taking away video game privileges from kids for fighting. I said that parents attempt to use negative punishment because there are many reasons why it might not work. For example, if the kids have plenty of other games or toys available to them, taking away the video game might not reduce their fighting. Of course, these are intentional uses of negative punishment, but negative punishment can also occur naturally in our lives. For example, one might almost lose a friend after gossiping behind her back. The loss to the friendship reduces the likelihood of future gossiping. Just to make it super clear that positive does not mean good and negative does not mean bad, I want to point out that under the positive column in our chart, you see references to pleasant as well as unpleasant stimuli. And under the negative column of our chart, you also see references to both pleasant and unpleasant stimuli. Remember, positive refers directly to the presentation of a stimulus, and negative refers directly to the removal or avoidance of a stimulus. Remember, reinforcement refers to an increased likelihood that a behavior will be repeated, and punishment refers to a decreased likelihood that a behavior will be repeated. Here's your first multiple choice quiz question. In this cartoon, the mother holds up a package of Dove ice cream bars and says, "I told you these are for later." The child screams, "But I want a Dove bar now." In the next panel, you see that the mother has put a Dove soap bar in the child's mouth. Focusing on the child's behavior, does this cartoon illustrate positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, or negative punishment? Pause the video now to give yourself enough time to identify the correct answer. The correct answer is positive punishment. The mother wants to reduce the likelihood of the child's misbehavior by putting the bad-tasting Dove soap in his mouth as a consequence. Here are two more multiple-choice quiz questions. The mom is so embarrassed by her tantruming child that she buys him the candy that he wants just to make him stop. In this scenario, mom's behavior is positively reinforced, negatively reinforced, positively punished, or negatively punished. What about the child's behavior? You have the same options for the child's behavior. Was it positively reinforced, negatively reinforced, positively punished, or negatively punished? Pause the video now to give yourself enough time to answer both questions. In this scenario, mom's behavior, which was to buy the child some candy, was negatively reinforced. That is, she is more likely to do that again in the future in order to escape or avoid the embarrassment of her screaming child. The child, on the other hand, was positively reinforced for his tantruming. That is, he is more likely to tantrum again in order to get some candy. What we see here is the beginning of a vicious cycle whereby the child tantrums more often because mom is giving in, and mom is giving in to escape continued embarrassment. This concludes our video tutorial on operant conditioning, focusing on differentiating reinforcement from punishment. We have lots more videos on this topic to help increase your confidence in mastering these concepts. Also, always remember that your instructors are more than happy to help you.